Right now, Japan means bullet trains, neon-lit cities, and some of the most advanced technology on the planet. But rewind exactly 100 years, and this same country looked like an entirely different world. No smartphones, no television, and yet this single era quietly built the foundation for everything Japan would become. Let's go back to a time known as the Taisho era. In 1912, Emperor Meiji died, and his son took the throne as Emperor Taisho. That moment kicked off just 14 short years that would transform Japan from a mostly rural, traditional country into a modern, urbanized power on the world stage. Walk through the streets of Tokyo back then, and you'd see electric trams and streetcars weaving through the city, part of a rapidly growing transportation network. Inspired by the London Underground, a Tokyo company even began building Japan's very first subway line, which would open just a few years later, in 1927. In 1925, Japan aired its first ever radio broadcast, a station that would soon merge into what we now know as NHK. Movie studios were booming too, with names like Nikatsu and Shochiku producing films for audiences who were falling in love with the big screen for the very first time. And the cities themselves were physically changing. Wooden buildings gave way to reinforced concrete, while electricity spread far enough to power new roads, bridges, and railways across the country. But the biggest transformation wasn't happening in the buildings, it was happening in people's minds. This era became known as Taisho Democracy. Political power shifted away from a small elite and into the hands of elected leaders and everyday citizens. Newspapers exploded in popularity. For the first time, ordinary people were publicly debating rights, freedom, and equality. Feminist movements grew. Calls for universal voting rights spread across the country. Western culture flooded in alongside all of this change, and Japan adopted a whole new style people called haikara, a word borrowed straight from the English phrase high collar. Young men started wearing bowler hats and round glasses with no lenses at all, styled after the American comedian Harold Lloyd. Department stores, cafes, and cinemas turned Tokyo and Osaka into buzzing centers of modern life. Even dinner tables changed forever. Curry rice, croquettes, and pork cutlets, known as tonkatsu, all made their first appearance on Japanese menus during this decade, dishes that are still some of the most beloved comfort foods in Japan today. On the outskirts of major cities, families began building what were called culture houses, blending a traditional Japanese entryway with a fully Western-style living room, complete with modern plumbing and gas connections. Writers captured this strange in-between moment perfectly. Authors like Natsume Soseki and Akutagawa Ryunosuke wrote about a country caught between old traditions and a rapidly modernizing world, and about the quiet anxiety that came with all of it. Then, in 1923, disaster struck. The Great Kanto earthquake tore through the region, and the fires that followed destroyed entire neighborhoods. Over 100,000 people were killed or went missing. It remains one of the deadliest natural disasters in Japan's history, and a devastating reminder that even in an era defined by progress, the world could still change in an instant. By the time the Taisho era ended in 1926, Japan looked almost unrecognizable compared to just 14 years earlier. The fashion, the food, the political ideas, even the shape of the cities, so much of modern Japan was actually born in this brief, remarkable decade. So here's a question for you. If you could spend just one day walking through the streets of 1920s Tokyo, what do you think would surprise you the most? Let me know down in the comments.